Want to do it with Rutger? We're doing it with Rutger. Today on Rutger Hauer Cooks for You.
I don't know. I mean, I would watch that cooking program.
Right. So on this episode of the Culture Cast, I am joined by I'm your host, Chris Sasha is assumed at this point. I am joined by my good friend and yours all the way from Pulp Dash Serenade, Mr. Cullen Gallagher.
Howdy.
Not talking about noir films today. Talking about Japanese, American remakes of Japanese films today. I don't know why they didn't call it Zatoichi. I mean, I know why they didn't, because that word means nothing to American audiences. But we're talking about an American-made Zatoichi remake called Blind Fury that, yes, stars Rutger Hauer, because this month it's all Rutger all month long.
Designer drugs, boy. Wave of the future. You lost a lot of money downstairs, Mr. Devereaux, and you can't pay it back. You're just the kind of chemist I need.
I'm not gonna make that shit for you!
I heard your ex-wife and son are living down in Miami, Mr. Devereaux.
No! You son of a bitch!
Nick Parker. Your name is on the memorial.
Yes, I've been there.
Frank.
Step aside, blind man. Now.
I get the window seat. You don't need it. You're blind.
Get me there, little prick.
You done the war, huh?
Right. Shoot!
What the hell is going on around here?
Look out!
If you like this stuff, maybe we can set up a regular pipeline.
Blind Fury. Fuck off. I also do circumcision.
So the film is directed by Philip Noyce, written by Charles Robert Carner, and it stars one Rutger Hauer as our titular blind samurai Nick Parker, who loses his eyes in Vietnam only to come back to the United States, looking for his former partner who believed he's dead, partner in the military, and he gets embroiled in some drug dealers, played randomly by Noble Willingham, of all people. Just a lot of rednecks, lots of redneck folk. Like the cast of the bad guys from Walker Texas Ranger have entered the chat.
I loved seeing Nick Cassavetes as one of the. I don't know. I mean, he's almost dressed up like a cowboy. He's part of a duo,
right? Him and Rick Overton, who we have spoken to on this show long ago. I don't remember what for, but
oh man,
Rick Overton with hair.
They were so good as the buffoon goons. They owned that role.
Yeah.
And they weren't given a lot to work with, but they are funny.
It's mug to the camera, and punch people.
And they're also good at getting knocked out.
That's true.
They
have
really
funny
faces,
right? I mean, that's the thing. They have like faces that can emote, and that's like what you need because this. Yeah. So we've kind of mentioned a little bit. This movie is a quote comedy. unquote. I think we'll kind of get into that when we talk more about the film. But Cullen, first your thoughts on Rutger Hauer as an actor, your exposure to Rutger Hauer as an actor, and then your thoughts on Blind Fury.
Well, I think it's actually great that you're doing Rutger Hauer this month, because I'm going to be very selfish and say that he's been someone I've been wanting to see a lot more of. So this was a new film to me. And I honestly don't know how I missed this one in video stores growing up, because I feel like this would have been, right in the blockbuster action section, which, that's where I grew up.
Right.
But somehow I missed this one. I recently saw Split Second for the first time, which I really liked. I've been wanting to see Legend of the Holy Drinker for a long time, which I still need to. He's great in Nighthawks, which I rewatched recently. So I like him, but this was a different side of Rutger Hauer that I hadn't seen before. Which question am I on that you asked?
You're now
am
on
I like
to
2.5?
What did you think of the movie? Yeah.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. It's, a really offbeat action comedy. I don't, because it is, taking a Zatoichi plot and trying to set it in Florida and Reno in modern day times. And it's odd because part of the movie feels like in late 80s, early 90s action movie where you got to go up against some, drug dealing baddies. But then the main character does not feel like Stallone or Chuck Norris or Seagal at all. And then I went back and watched the Zatoichi Challenge from which it's based. It's more similar than I expected. It's clear that they borrowed a number of plot points, visual gags, and we can chat more about that. And I loved the Zatoichi film. I thought that was just spectacular. And coming back to this movie again after having seen the Zatoichi, it holds up well. I had a really good time. How about you, Chris?
Coming into this month has been interesting because I have not a real large experience pool with Rutger Hauer outside of Blade Runner, which is obviously a very big role, but and the role he kind of was famous for. Obviously, he passed away. But I think my issue with this movie, similarly to last week, is it's just a strange tone throughout.
Yeah.
But the issue that I really have with this movie is Rutger Hauer's character is from a different movie. It is not this movie. It is not the tone of this movie. But the poster is selling us like his character is that character in this movie. I mean, the Blind Fury poster is great. He may be blind, but he don't need no dog. Like, that's a great tagline. That movie is not what this is. There are glimmers of it, but this is a much more like kind of serious movie than the poster leads on, than even the premise, I think, leads on. But then when you realize, oh, it's a remake of a serious movie, serious, more serious than this, then you realize very quickly, oh, they're trying to figure out a way to make it work both ways. And that is a balancing act that very few directors can really pull off, regardless of what genres they're trying to mix together.
I would be curious to know what happened to the script of this movie.
Likewise.
So, because I would agree with you that I think the serious elements don't quite mesh with the goofy elements.
Right.
The bond between the little boy that he's bringing to Reno to find his dad. The kid's kind of a brat from the moment he's on screen.
Yeah.
And I can understand sort of Rutger Hauer's devotion because, okay, he's the son of my buddy from Vietnam. I feel this responsibility. But there's really the evidence on screen of their bonding it feels like there should be more.
Yeah.
Like maybe there was more of it in the original script and they opted to go for more explosions and people falling out of glass windows and
Randall Tex Cobb being cut in half.
So good.
I mean, again, the fun parts of the movie are fun, but then, it really just kind of, I'm not going to say falls apart, but it slows down when Brandon Call, who plays Billy Devereaux, the child actor, is on screen. And that's a big part of this movie. I mean, that's a fair portion of this movie is him and Rutger Hauer. And I never once got the sense that believably these characters are caring about one another, should care about each other, do care about each other. Why does, like, Rutger Hauer's character is awfully altruistic. Let's put it that way.
So something that's different about the Zatoichi movie is it's number 17.
Right.
People going into this, probably have, or people going into Zatoichi Challenge probably had more of an understanding of the character. But even within the one movie, it explains at the beginning, okay, he's a gambler, he's a wanderer. He stops and gives massages to people for money so he can, stay on the road. So it explains, cool, how does this guy survive? Okay, he gives massages. This movie doesn't explain that. And you can assume, okay, he was in the military, he was injured, he's probably on disability. But they never even address.
I actually don't assume that. They make it pretty clear that, like, they thought he was dead. He's been dead. Like, that's what doesn't make sense from this movie, from almost the first, like, fade out, because there's a kind of cold open where Rutger Hauer's character, you kind of see how he goes blind. And then it's like 20 years later. And it's like, no. Like, I mean, I guess they show him training too, which is kind of just feels like they had to put it in there. It doesn't do anything. But, like, it's like, no, you don't get to just say he's in the village and then 20 years later he's walking on the Florida highway. Like, I can't make those logical jumps, because the movie then gives evidence to the contrary of what I would think makes sense. Like you said, he comes back to the States, but they make it very clear that, like, his name is on the Vietnam Memorial in DC. So they think he's dead. So he gets back to the States somehow. And it feels like they just picked his character up and placed him in Florida. And there's never anything in between.
I would agree. And another thing that doesn't quite make sense is, he's wounded in the war, and some random villagers take care of him and teach him how to be this blind swordsman for seemingly no reason.
In Vietnam, too.
Yeah.
There's some weird, like, I don't want to be CinemaSins, but there are some weird idiosyncrasies and some strange choices, because the villainous assassin character at the end of the movie, Sho Kosugi, is a Japanese actor. All of this and Zatoichi is a Japanese film series. So it's like, it makes no sense.
So one thing that I think dramatically the Zatoichi film does a lot better is throughout the story, which is essentially the same. It's Zatoichi, meets a young boy and his mom, and then he has to deliver the boy to the father, and they go on this journey. It turns out the father has been, sort of kidnapped by some gangsters. Instead of making designer drugs, he's creating illegal pornography that can be sold. But along the way, he keeps meeting this other samurai, and several times, and you start to get this tension where it's like Zatoichi, that he's going to have to face off with this other samurai at some point, but you don't know who he is, who he's working for. He's got to be a badass. Mm-hmm. I don't really want to give it away, but, like, when you actually find out who he is in his relationship to the plot, it's like, it kind of throws it for an interesting turn. And then, should I be giving away the end of the plot twist on the episode right now?
Probably.
Okay, well, if you don't want to know what happens to the Zatoichi
movie's been out since 1967. You're good.
True. Okay, well, if you're listening, you've had fair warning. He's basically working for the badass samurai is working for the government and trying to kill the same person that Zatoichi is trying to deliver the son to.
Interesting.
Because his mission is like, we got to, like, wipe out this guy, the gangster that's, like, creating the pornography, and anyone that's associated with it. And so at the end of the movie, after all the bad guys are killed, Zatoichi reunites, the father and the son. And then there's that badass samurai. It's fucking snowing outside. It's beautifully shot. And Zatoichi is just like, I don't want to fight you. And the guy's like, I have an order. I have to kill everyone associated with this. So I think that works better because you're building up to that climax. You know who this character is. He and Zatoichi have some really nice moments together. Like at one point, he wants to give Zatoichi a lot of money, and Zatoichi has pride. And he's like, no, I can't take this. And he's like, but I'm a samurai. You can't give it back to me. And so you start seeing already this sort of conflict of, two wills. And you don't get that in Blind Fury when the Japanese samurai shows up at the end of the movie.
You use the word shows up and you're being serious. It's just like, hey, we got this person for you to fight. What?
And it's a good fight, but
it's a good fight. But like, that's it. It's one fight at the end of the movie. And it's just like, hey, this random character you haven't seen the entire movie, though I would contend you should have. He should have shown up several times, at least one other time, really. I mean, just once.
And it could have happened within.
Yeah, there were plenty of moments.
Script.
Yeah. He fights the Noble Willingham gang several times. And the assassin could have been there towards the end of the film because you have Noble Willingham at one point say, like, I don't care, get whoever. Get Bruce Lee or get Bruce Lee's dead. And it's like, oh, that's why I assume they got him, because it's like that insane conversation that these characters have. But they're just like, we have this person for you to face. It's like, what? You let it get all the way to this point? He's at the 99-yard line and you finally decided to get some. Charles Robert Carner's script is all over the place. All over the place.
To me, that suggests lots of rewrites.
Yes, agreed.
And I can look at this and be like, okay, there might have been moments where other things were happening, like all the action and comedy, which is amplified so much, like those almost seem like touch-up spots.
Mm-hmm. Well, looking at Charles Robert Carner's other things he's worked on. So before he wrote this, he wrote Let's Get Harry, which I have not seen, but he also wrote Gymkata.
I still haven't seen that one. I'm really curious about it.
I've heard all kinds of things about it. I know very little about it other than How Did This Get Made? Covered it a really long time ago. It's supposedly a very strange movie. I have not seen it, but this movie does not give me pause to go out and watch more of the things he's worked on, because a lot of the other stuff is TV movies, some what would seem to be a film with a lot of right-wing folks like Jon Voight, and then everybody's favorite and my neighbor ostensibly here in Nebraska wrote 2008's and directed Witless Protection, starring the one and only Larry the Cable Guy.
I don't know that.
There's a reason you don't. It is Larry the Cable Guy protecting Jenny McCarthy.
Oh, and he did the remake of Vanishing Point, which I've been curious about.
Oh, yeah.
But speaking of people involved in this...
also did Witless Protection.
So this is an early Philip Noyce, early American Philip Noyce film. I've been wanting to see more of his stuff. I've heard really good things about Newsfront. I still haven't seen Dead Calm. I've seen a lot of his later American movies, like Quiet American, Patriot Games, Clear and Present Danger.
The Tom Clancy Harrison Ford hour.
Have you seen Dead Calm?
I haven't. The only other Philip Noyce films I've seen are Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. Like that's my overlap. It's all the other movies I've heard of, some of them like Rabbit Proof Fence and Bone Collector, but like a lot of these, like some of the earlier stuff.
Bone Collector, I remember really liking.
That's a early Jeff Deaver adaptation, right, of the Lincoln Rhyme character with Denzel, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah, I like his movies I've seen, which The Quiet American, Rabbit Proof Fence, Bone Collector. I don't remember The Saint. I remember enjoying Clear and Present Danger and Patriot Games at the time.
Yeah, they're probably a little jingoistic now.
But yeah, his early Australian films sound really interesting. Backroads and Newsfront.
But then you come to this movie. Like, I think my issue with this movie really is I look at the poster and the poster looks cool, but that translates to, there's an 86-minute runtime. That translates to like 10 minutes of the movie. It's just not, I don't know why it's not as much fun as it could have been, because they know what movie they're trying to make. That's very clear to me. Look at the poster. I mean, Rutger Hauer's goofy ass grin, him holding the sword like this, the hands, like they get, and with that tagline, like they get what movie they were trying to make. I almost feel like they're trying to make up for the fact it's not that movie with this kind of over the top, like ad campaign. That poster is not this movie. The way this movie ends is not that poster. This movie takes itself super duper seriously for no necessary reason. It does. Like, it's kind of strange, frankly. Like, within the first 15 minutes of this movie, you have a female character getting shot point blank with a shotgun. And it's kind of shocking.
Oh, yeah. That opening scene is pretty violent.
Yeah. And man, do you know a lot about Randall Tex Cobb?
No, I mean, he was a professional, fighter and an athlete before he made movies, right?
Also, supposedly professional asshole. So, unsurprisingly, there have been a lot of stories about kind of how hard he was to work with. But man, the look that he has, like, I don't know, he has such a great look. Obviously, if you've seen Raising Arizona, he has a rather large part in that film. But the movie that I always remember him from is Fletch Lives, where he plays Ben Dover in the cell, where Fletch asks him about molesting a dead horse. So he's like, "What are you in here for?" And Randall Tex Cobb with a straight face just goes, "Molesting a dead horse." And I think Fletch says something to the effect of, "Yeah, I'm trying to cut back myself." So yeah, I love Randall Tex Cobb. It's unfortunate that, like, I've heard a lot of really negative stories about him, because if you do some and that's a lot of character actors, a lot of actors, a lot of people in general. I mean, go look up Klaus Kinski, for fuck's sake. Jesus Christ. Like, people had a lot of positive things to say about his acting, but not a lot of positive things to say about him as a human being. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, again, it's like anything else. But man, he's a intimidating figure anytime he's on screen. Dude's huge.
From the moment he comes on, something about that face, seeing that stubble.
And that big nose of his that's been broken and punched like 1,000,000 times. Yeah.
He is a worthy villain.
Yeah, he's great. As the main villain, he's great. I just, when you say Noble Willingham, it's not like alarm bells go off, right? Right? Like, it would have been better if it had just been Randall Tex Cobb as the main villain of the film. That's more my point. Noble Willingham doesn't add much because, again, the movie, for whatever reason, keeps Rutger Hauer and kind of the main larger villains way off to the side up until the last scene. And it's like, even in Die Hard, a movie where they're physically separated almost the entire movie, they still figure out a way for the characters to interact with each other. And I think it's especially the villain and the hero, like, that's so important in these kinds of movies. Because it really feels like, when Rutger Hauer shows up finally at Noble Willingham's casino, where they're ripping all these people off, which is a fucking hilarious scene.
That's a good one. Yeah,
that's a real good one. But, they get to the top of this casino and they show up, and it's like, he's like, "Hey, Mr. Blind Man." It's like, you have no repertoire with this character. Like, your response should have been, "Who the fuck are you?" Frankly, like, he didn't know who he was. I mean, he knew who he was, but it's, again, like, essentially Rutger Hauer inserts himself into this entire movie.
Yeah.
Which I don't know how I feel about that. Because, like, he as a character is not crucial to the story. He makes himself crucial. He's like, I'll save you. I'll protect you. But, like, he's just like, "Hey, I'm going to hang out with my buddy who hasn't seen me in 20 years.
Who thinks he left me for dead.
Right. Yeah.
Which is another sort of... It should be a heavier moment between the two characters, considering what actually happened.
It's a strange scene too. You're talking about the scene where they're in the cable car together. It's a bizarre.
I mean, just any of their. I mean, even from the moment when he, Rutger Hauer enters the laboratory to sort of rescue him, there should be a little more weight, I think.
Or none at all. I mean, again, like, that's the problem with this movie. If you add that kind of weight into the movie, then it becomes even further away from the comedy it thinks it is.
But they even had the moment where he was, the son was like, "Oh, how is my daddy in combat?" And so Rutger Hauer's telling the story to the kid, but we see it in his mind what really happened. So it's building this tension about, like, okay, nobody knows what the dad really did.
Right.
He doesn't realize what's happened to me. I think it, as we've said before, it feels like the script is sort of leading towards a more serious, dramatic moment between these two characters.
Mm-hmm.
And instead we get the two of them in a ski lift where one of them is making napalm
Yeah.
and then dropping the bottles.
And he's like, "Oh, sorry. You're the one who can see here, Terrence O'Quinn." That you want to talk about a real kind of interesting credit to come up at the beginning. Did you notice Tim Matheson, of all people, produced this movie? Yep. And apparently Tim Matheson, huge fan of the Zatoichi films as well. That was his whole reason for producing this movie, was he's a fan of the Zatoichi films.
I mean, it's a solid
reason, but I
kept thinking, was there any chance in hell that this would become a franchise? And it doesn't have enough franchisability.
I mean,
in my opinion.
Would you contend though that they try?
I don't know.
I think they try for it to. Well, no, I'm not talking about the movie actually, but the ending tries to set it up.
Oh yeah.
The movie doesn't do anything to set this up further beyond this movie, but the ending is like, no. He's going off on his own. It's like, but that's not even like, that's not a fulfilling character end for his character at all. Like, why? Remember when at the beginning of this podcast, when I mentioned like the whole thing about 20 years, what was he doing in those 20 years? Why did he train to be a blind samurai warrior? Like, what was he doing? Was he just walking around minding his own business, or was he going from town to town, Bruce Banner style, protecting, like the man with no name? Like, that's what I can't figure out, because the way the character is being portrayed and the way I would say the story is written that we pick back up with him, it's like, and the way the movie ends, what I think reinforces, it's like he's just a traveling, like the Zatoichi character of the other films. He's a traveling blind samurai who goes from town to town doing things. That's the plot of these stories. But this, I cannot figure out what was he doing for 20 years? Why is his character okay with just killing people? It's odd. Like, the movie doesn't even know what it wants to be from the second scene, the first scene after the cold open. It's strange.
The intro is also interesting, and it's, maybe we should have touched on it earlier. Or rather, the intro to Florida, because you see him, walking on the side of the road with his cane. He jumps over the dog shit because he can smell it, and then he taps the alligator, and he's like, "Nice dog." And it's like they're sort of trying to show this, like, well, he's a little bit of a bumbling idiot.
Right.
He's not that capable. He can't even tell a gator from a dog.
But yet he's supposed to go kill people.
Yeah.
And they show it at the end of the movie too, where the kid throws him his sword and he like fucking mugs for the camera as it flies over his shoulder. He's like,
which I thought was a nice moment of comedy in that.
Right.
See, I mean, I think Noyce is a good director.
This movie. It's just not for this, not for this movie. Like, that belongs in this movie's tone doesn't make me want any of the comedy to exist in this movie. Do you know what I mean? It feels so serious that anytime they do comedy, it's like, why are you showing me the movie I wish this was? Just stick with the movie that you so badly want to make. You want to make a serious Zatoichi movie? Fucking make it. Just because it's the 80s doesn't mean you have to make it an action comedy. That wasn't the requirement. Like, Lethal Weapon and all these other action comedies are coming out. Schwarzenegger Commando. Like, gotta make it funny. It's not necessarily.
That's probably what the assignment from the producers was.
Yeah.
Because it's the company
fucking
who made
Matheson.
it. The company that produced it did all the Revenge of the Nerds movies.
Well, Daniel Grodnick was president of, he was chairman and CEO of National Lampoons. I mean, these people that produced this movie are comedy. Tim Matheson's a comedy actor, but I mean, Tim Matheson's been to a lot of comedy films. I would contend the role that a lot of people know him for is a comedy. And Daniel Grodnick, as the president and CEO at one time of National Lampoons, they understand comedy. And yet it's like, can you imagine them watching this movie and being like, this is funny? Like, I don't think so.
Well, I think that for me, at least as a viewer, the action comedy moments were the best parts of the movie.
Right.
Because I think they're Noyce he handles them well. I think they're well filmed. The movie has a lot of polish to it. Like, this isn't a cheap production.
No. Everything looks really good. I think they have at times, and this is just a case with a lot of these kinds of movies, because again, it's a lot of overhead and it's a lot of practical effects, but they don't keep consistent with how the sword is used. Sometimes he slashes people and they cuts their hands off. Sometimes he slashes people and, nothing. Yeah. And but they die. And it's like, again, like those little things kind of get in the way. But for the most part, this is a really well-made movie, like objectively well-made. But I just wanted more fun,
Yeah, I think you're right. I needed to go full on one direction or another.
Right. Because, I mean, if you have this movie about this former Vietnam soldier who's blind and he, inner city with drugs and something, make it serious. Make it like a Seagal movie, but with Rutger Hauer, because those Seagal movies aren't funny. I mean, those early ones are not funny, but they're kind of grungy and grimy. Like, have him. Why is he in Florida? Have him go to Detroit, Chicago, New York, somewhere where he can get into it with street gangs and make it, or make it like Death Wish. That kind of like just him fucking around with street gangs and killing them. Like, just keeping the streets safe. Because that's, again, like, it seems like that's the movie they wanted. That's the easy movie with a blind samurai character as his just wandering the streets, keeping the peace, but, doing what he can to keep the peace. And if things escalate, going further and stopping them. But then it's like, I really have a hard time getting motivated in this movie about the plot and anything with Terry O'Quinn's character, who's in the third scene of the movie. And you're like, oh my God, who is that character? Like, he's upside down, they're hanging him. It's like, this guy has to be important, but you don't even realize who he is for another like 5-10 minutes. So I don't know. It's like they should have, like you said, they should have stuck with one or the other. But by doing both, it's like neither one really works. And when you do the one that you're successful at, it just, I think, overall hurts the movie.
I would recommend checking out Zatoichi Challenged, because I think that movie actually does a really good job of balancing all these aspects. Like, dramatically, the story holds together pretty well. There's a weird like digression, like 20 minutes into the movie that, it's almost like, okay, what is this little bit? But once he and the boy get on the road and get to the town with the dad, it holds together really well. There's, the drama feels weighty. The characters, you care about, there's tension. There's moments of humor. There's goofy moments, like the little bit of the boy playing a trick on the Rutger Hauer character of giving him a stone and telling him it's a piece of candy. That's straight out of the Zatoichi movie. And so it's, I would recommend checking out the Zatoichi movie. I think a lot of what you're looking for, you would find there.
I guess I just wonder then what their assignment was. Because again, they must have succeeded enough because the movie got made the way that it was. They didn't change it. I mean, maybe this movie got just cut to hell on the editing floor, but I never read anything about that.
What I can imagine, and I wish Richard were here.
Where you at, Mr. Haddam?
But because a story he tells, or it's not a story, but a phrase he uses a lot is just like, would anybody have been fired for green lighting this? And
right.
I sort of feel like I can imagine coming with a script and having a meeting and, the finance, part of the deal being like, cool, like, Beverly Hills Cop has been big. As you mentioned, Commando, action comedy. And then, the creative people being like, yeah, we can amplify that. We can do more of that. I can see that being a thing.
Yeah, me too.
And, it's like at the end of the day, you messed with the alchemy of the story. Then again, maybe I'm completely wrong, and this sort of tonal inconsistency was there from the get-go.
Well, and I mean, the other thing about this movie is they were trying to make a sequel. So maybe the sequel would have been less funny and more serious. I mean, maybe they would have said, okay, well, when the movie comes out, the tone, people didn't like the tone, so maybe they steer away from it into something else. Because you could have made this essentially Rambo First Blood 2 tone, where it's just like over the top gore, which again they kind of do, because there are people getting dismembered and fucking swords thrown through them and stuff. I mean, this movie isn't without the gore either. which is surprising because you could pair the gore with comedy pretty easily. I mean, horror movies do it all the time.
And they do it quite successfully.
Yeah.
Because seeing blood and vomit, spew out of people, it's pretty funny.
Yeah. I mean, and when you watch, I'm not a fan of Tarantino, but the scene at the end of the first Kill Bill with samurai swords where she's fighting the crazy 88s, that's hilarious. The dudes with their arms flying off and blood shooting out, like that's funny because we're understanding it to be funny. And
I love 70s, the Shaw Brothers movies from the 70s that Tarantino was aping.
Right.
That shit's funny as hell. And I think that's something I really admire about a lot of those 70s martial arts movies and, 60s and 80s and, onwards. But the Hong Kong action films seem to do a really good job of being able to transition between, we're going to have a really serious bit of action. Now we're going to have some slapstick action. Now it's going to be a little gory. Now we're going to go back to some serious martial arts. Now we're going to have like a joke and move on to the next part. We're going to have a pretty serious story. Now we're going to have like a little joke part. That's always impressed me, like watching these movies recently. I'm used to American films which don't have as much tonal breadth.
Well, we've been watching a lot of them recently.
It's true.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of those Bronson movies last month were just kind of like they're their own thing.
But I still feel like those Shaw Brothers movies are just way wilder in terms of the extremes, in terms of tone.
It should have. Again, like you can have these weird tonal melanges, or you can have just psychotic movies like the Shaw Brothers. And that's when I don't know, when your premise is this over the top as it is, why not just be like, yeah, I get that it's Zatoichi, but steer into the wackiness. Like, make it your own thing. Because, like, Zatoichi's good and all, but you're never going to be able to do it the service that it deserves. Because I just don't think American culture is, we don't have that ingrained with us, the thing about the samurais, and it's not a cultural thing for us. And so when they make it this like, oh, it's Zatoichi in the United States, it's like, no, it's just a blind samurai running around with a sword. There's no cultural significance to it either. And again, like when you translate something that's so culturally kind of dependent to a culture that has nothing to do with it, you lose some of that too. And I think, again, the slapstick is trying to make up for it.
I mean, we have never even mentioned until now, he's not a samurai in this movie.
Right.
He was trained in Vietnam. Not
right. But like, again, I don't know what else to call him, because in the original,
you're totally right.
In the original series, like, he is a samurai.
Oh no, you're totally right. I agree. And I think that's one of the things that just doesn't make sense from the get-go.
Yeah, he's in Vietnam and he gets trained to fight with the samurai sword. If you know anything about anything, let that sink in, because it sounds insane. And again, like from the get-go, it should have just been insane then. Like, just go full insane. If you don't even care about where you learn how to be a sword fighter, then just go full bore.
You know what insane scene I really like that we haven't talked about is the car chase.
Yeah, the car chase is fantastic.
We briefly talked about, Nick Cassavetes kidnapping, Rutger Hauer and the boy, and they're in the back seat. And then, they managed to, start a fire. So they're able to, the van stops, they can get away. They have to go back and find, his samurai sword. And it winds up being Rutger Hauer who's driving the van blind.
Right.
And I really enjoyed that scene. It's stupid. It's silly.
And it's out of another movie.
And it's well done. I love
it's a lot of fun.
With the other, he's, because of course he's not driving. Like, he can't see anything. The little boy is doing, he's like, just tell me where to turn. The little boy's doing a terrible job telling him what to do. So he's veering into the other lane. There's the old man who's like, what's wrong with you? Are you blind or something? And
yes.
Rutger Hauer, yeah, what's your excuse? Which is great. I enjoyed that. And then, of course, Nick Cassavetes has to like hit another car and flip over and then land. Like, that was a nice bit of stunt work. I'm like, God, I hope the stunt guy was okay. Actually
sitting here and talking more about it, I would actually go as far as to contend that like you said, the things that work are the comedy, obviously, and the things that don't work are how serious the movie gets. It's almost like the people who produce this movie have a background in comedic film.
You're right.
Yeah, because the car chases. I mean, at the end, he's like, maybe I should get my driver's license again. Like, that's fucking hilarious. That's funny. Like, Rutger Hauer is a funny guy. He has pretty good comic timing. I know not a lot of movies lean into that, and there's a reason for that. When he plays one of the more intimidating cinematic villains, you kind of get typecast. But, like, he has so much charisma in this movie.
Like the burrito scene.
Yeah, the burrito scene.
We haven't talked about that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's our real introduction to him. And, I love it. He's sitting there, and then the guy walks over, and his young punk, offers to put hot sauce, and then puts, the super spicy sauce over everything. And then, Howard takes a bite, and all the buddies are laughing, and he's like, could be a little more spicy. Yeah. Or what is it? It's like, could be a little more macho or something.
Yeah, he's like, that's a little mild for me. I need it more spicy. It's like,
but I liked that. There was, there was some good humor because he's a good actor.
Yeah, well, and ultimately, I feel like anything else, I feel like by the end of this month, I'm going to be saying something similar to what I said at the end of Bronson month, which is, some of these movies this month suited him. Some of these movies didn't. And I think that is, when you have these kind of character, because that's the thing, Rutger Hauer's a character actor. Bronson is more of an action star. It's weird. Like, we don't do back-to-back months very often of actors, but this year we're doing Bronson and Rutger Hauer back-to-back. And so it's kind of this interesting comparison because Bronson and Rutger Hauer share a lot in common, both rather unconventional action stars in a lot of ways, being cast in role. I mean, Stallone's not going to be in this movie. Schwarzenegger's not going to be in this movie. But an actor like Rutger Hauer is in this movie. But I would not contend that Rutger Hauer is an action star, at least not the same way Bronson is. Maybe Rutger Hauer is his own kind of action star. He's unconventional, that's for sure.
I think Rutger Hauer did a wider variety of roles.
Right. Agreed.
And a wider variety of leading roles. Whereas like Bronson's background was doing, character sidekick bits.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Rutger Hauer is known for playing villains, essentially. The Hitcher and Blade Runner.
I need to see The Hitcher so bad.
It's real good. It's real good. Really, 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 really good.
So what are the other Rutger Hauer movies that you're covering this month?
Split Second, which you had mentioned already.
Did you watch that yet?
I have not watched it yet.
Okay. I really enjoyed that. So.
And Surviving the Game.
Oh my God. That was a staple growing up. I saw that umpteen times, and I have been wanting to rewatch that because it's Ernest Dickerson directing, who was a Spike Lee cinematographer, and is quite a good director. I remember liking that movie, but I have not seen it in 25 years, probably.
Oh wow!
But I saw that movie probably like six or seven times back when it came out.
I've never seen it. Rutger Hauer's got a sick ass goatee.
Oh man. Well, I look forward to listening to that episode. I'll rewatch the movie in anticipation of it.
Do you remember it being more tonally consistent than this movie?
Consistent, yeah.
Okay.
But again, it's been 25. Like, me saying 25 years is not
an exaggeration.
An exaggeration. Yeah.
That's fair.
I remember that having a good cast.
Yeah, it's like Ice-T, Rutger Hauer, Charles S. Dutton, Gary Busey, John C. McGinley. Yeah, man.
Someone could do a fun is probably the wrong word, but a interesting series or book about that whole Most Dangerous Game premise. Because that's been used so many times, and it's...
Yeah, as recently as that movie a year ago?
The one
Samara Weaving, where I forget what the movie's called, but it's a kind of a horror movie where people are being hunted.
The one I'm thinking of, I can't remember who's in it, but it's, the woman is marrying this guy, and they, she meets the family, and then it turns out they hunt somebody every year. Ready or Not.
Is that what it is? So was I right?
Yep, and she's in that. Yes, that's the one.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard good things about it.
Yeah, that was good.
She also plays, is it Alex Winter's daughter in Bill and Ted? Taste the Music? Yeah, that's right.
And it's the people who made Bill and Ted made Blind Fury, like the production company.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I was looking and I was like, man, they had coming up on this movie. The production company had a bunch of big hits.
Well, I mean, yeah, Interscope. I mean, Jesus Christ, dude. I mean, there are plenty of movies in the late 80s and early 90s that they had. I mean, Three Men and a Baby, Bill and Ted, Terminal Velocity. I mean, plenty of that's a joke, by the way. But Jumanji in the 90s, Mr. Holland's Opus, The Pianist. I mean, holy shit. I mean, just some of those movies vary in quality. Some of those movies are clearly Oscar bait. But yeah, I mean, Interscope, man. Holy shit.
They branched off into the record label in the mid 90s.
That's right. And then are they Polygram now? They were bought by Polygram.
So, yeah.
Yeah. And then Polygram went to NBC Universal. I'm pretty sure. I mean, as conglomerates go.
What are they now owned by the Scheinhardt Wig Company? I've been rewatching 30 Rock.
I was going to say a fucking 30 Rock joke. The Scheinhardt
because Hulu got rid of Cheers, so they only have seasons 1 through 4, so I got to buy DVDs to get the rest of it.
What physical media?
What physical media? You want me to turn my computer screen to show you my wall?
Right. But he's like, we're these people that own the physical media that you've heard so much about. Streaming. It's really funny when your internet goes out, you realize how fucked you are without physical media. It's just like, what are you going to watch? Oh, right. Nothing.
I love, streaming. Streaming is great, but I hope companies keep putting out DVDs and Blu-rays.
Streaming's great, but
yeah, I mean that's
it's the limitation. That's the big but.
Yeah, I mean it's
so like the last movie we watched, Wanted Dead or Alive, this movie also has a Kino release, I guess later this year. So does this? I can't get a sense of what motivates Kino to release certain things, because there's like plenty of stuff where I'm like, you guys should release this.
Yeah, I don't know the behind the scenes. It seems that a lot of boutique labels are grabbing, these catalogs from, either smaller production, or distributors, or, I mean, Kino and Criterion both are grabbing stuff from major Hollywood studios, like classic films,
right?
Because they're abandoning it. I love Kino, the Studio Classics line. I admire Kino for diving into television movies, which a lot
Kino
of other
has
places
released Kolchak.
Yeah, I mean Kino. I mean, heck, back in the 90s when they were still mainly doing silent stuff as well as more like modern foreign and art house stuff. They've always had really interesting taste.
I agree. I just wonder, sometimes they just I'll be like da 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 da. Kino Lorber Blu-ray, and I'm like, what? Man, because when I think about something like this, I'm thinking who in 2022 is watching this? That's my question. Is that not a real question anymore? Who is watching Blind Fury in 2022?
It's a good question, and I guess maybe the reason why I'm a big fan of Kino Lorber, especially the Studio Classics line, is as a viewer, I want to see stuff that's a little bit off the beaten path. I like things where I'm just like, oh my God, I know all these actors. Why haven't I heard of this movie? Why haven't I seen it?
Right.
Even if it's not a great movie, that interests me more. And so I don't think I'm alone, clearly, because Kino continues to release stuff like this. That's
right.
I don't know if saying it's at the margins. It's like the margins of bigger names.
It has Rutger Hauer in it. I mean, people know who he is.
Yeah.
It's an action movie. Action comedy, quote unquote.
I love the fact that when, every few months when I go through their catalog of new releases, I'm going to find a dozen things that I haven't heard of before, things that might not have even been on DVD or that have been out of print for 15 years. And it's that's what interests me as a viewer. And not every company caters to that, but they are catering to that. So
Arrow does, Kino does, Criterion does. Yeah. We talk so much about streaming and all that, but the boutique services that offer physical media are really giving you a reason to own it. I mean, obviously they're expensive, but that comes with the territory with boutique products, but you can get them half off. Criterion goes half off all the time. Barnes and Noble has more Criterion Blu-rays than they know what to do with, and they go 50% off all the time. So, I mean, that's a good place to pick them up.
Kino has a lot of sales.
Yeah.
No, I mean, just
not advocating for buying everything, but like there's plenty of cool stuff to pick up.
Totally. And I think it's a matter of being smart. Like I was talking about, Cheers is no longer on Hulu because that was my I get up at 6 a.m, have a cup of tea, do the crossword. I want Cheers on. And it's going to cost me like $60 or $70 to buy the entire series on DVD. That's like 6 months of Hulu.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
and you have it forever. You have it forever.
Yeah. And I think,
that's the thing. You lose the internet. What are you going to watch? But Desert Island, and you can plug your TV in and you can plug a DVD player into it. You can watch Blu-rays until you're blue in the face. DVDs until you're blue in the face. I mean, you go to Goodwill and see that they're all $1 and somebody's buying them for $1. They're not sitting there for that long. I go to Goodwill all the time to look at books, and there are people buying those DVDs like they're going out of fucking style. So people are still buying physical media. They're just not paying exorbitant prices for it because there's so much of it in the world now. It's like anything else. People have said DVDs and Blu-rays are not worth buying anymore because of streaming. I mean, not you and I, but like a large group of people are like, I just have streaming. Remember when Netflix sent people DVDs? It's like, I kind of missed that, first off. But yeah, secondly, I do remember that because Netflix didn't used to be ubiquitous. It was things for weirdos who liked movies. That's what it was. I remember when Netflix was for people who liked movies, to watch movies. You know what I mean? And now it's not. I mean, it is that, but it's not that.
I mean, their model wasn't even new at the time because there was a home film festival. Facets out of Chicago is who I used, and Facets is still around. They just knew, meaning Netflix, just knew how to use. I mean, honestly, they just had a better internet interface. They made it easier for people to use and just to do at the click of a button.
And sometimes that's all it takes to set yourself apart from everybody else. That early on in the life of the internet and the life of this kind of stuff, that's all that it took.
I used to call Facets over the telephone to order, but I still remember being, a teenager in Maine, called Facets in Chicago before my voice had dropped. Who is this Fassbender guy? Can you recommend some movies?
That's fantastic.
And whoever on the other phone talked my ear off about Fassbender for a while. And then, but it cost, I mean, this is another big difference. I think to rent 1 or 2 movies from Chicago came to like $15.
Good luck with that now.
And you had to insure them because those were VHS tapes that would have cost honestly, some of those VHS tapes back in the day cost like $60 or $70.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you had to insure them and then you had to send them back, priority mail, tracked. Netflix, it was cheap. One price, didn't matter whether it was rare or not.
Not anymore. But hey, you know what? I'm still a fan of physical media. I own plenty of it. I have gotten rid of my DVD boxes, but I still own the DVDs. I still have them in big cases, but it's just to the point where it's like you've got the boxes are taking up. So I need a box for the boxes.
That's where I'm at. And
right. It's not like books where it's like I can't get rid of the book without getting rid of the substance of the book. I can get rid of the box and keep the goddamn DVD. I've kept boxes for some things, some of the more rarer stuff, but I'm not sure I own any DVDs that are collector's items. So
Yet,
right. Yeah. I do own Fletch. I own Fletch on DVD, the original pressing of Fletch, which was out of print for the longest time, which is weird to think about now because I'm sure it's streaming somewhere relatively easily.
Was that a Paramount title?
No, that's Universal.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's a Universal title.
It's available now, but it might not be soon.
Right. And it's probably available on streaming, but who knows? So I know I'm a huge proponent of physical media, and I'm glad that this movie's getting a physical release because, yeah, Tubi's fine, but again, there's no guarantee it'll be on Tubi next month.
Oh, man. So I kind of want to watch this again because the screenwriter is doing new commentary.
Oh, for this?
Yeah.
Man, okay. Interesting.
So this is going to get a third watch from me.
I would love to know if he talks about the sequel during the commentary. He has to, right? I want to know what the sequel for this movie was. Because at the end of the movie, I was like, I would watch another one of these movies. You know what I mean? Like his character, like, yeah, he's a character who's not supposed to be in this kind of movie. He's a character written for a different kind of movie that's more tonally in check with who his character is. But I would have watched another movie because maybe they would have gotten the tone right the second time around. But I like Rutger Hauer so much. It's like, you're not really like pulling, you're not really twisting my arm to make me watch another one of these movies. Wouldn't even have to really twist my arm to make me watch this again.
No, I'm in the same boat. I enjoyed both viewings for all of its problems and inconsistencies. Yeah, I had a good time. I mean, whenever I hear Stallone's name now, all I think about is how much I like Oscar.
Right? Man,
I loved that movie.
Fuck, when was that? Earlier this year? Was that this year?
I don't remember, but that was a great discovery.
Why did we watch Oscar? Mobster movies.
Yeah.
Right. That was a good movie. That was fun. Stallone. I mean, hey.
Have you seen Rhinestone?
No.
Yeah, him and Dolly.
Yeah, that's another, I was going to say, Cowboy Stallone movie, right?
Yeah, that's good. He's a cab driver in Dolly. Her manager makes a bet that, she can't make, the first person that crosses their path into a country star. And she takes the bet and it happens to be Stallone. So she has to teach him how to be country.
I would watch that.
It's fun.
I mean, I want to do Stallone movies at some point. So
how are you going to narrow it down to 5?
I don't know. Cliffhanger has to be there.
I love Cliffhanger.
Never even seen it.
Oh, okay. I hope you like it.
I mean, it has John Lithgow in it. John Lithgow plays the baddie, right? He's the bad guy.
Yeah. Michael Rooker's in it.
Oh, my God. Yeah, I'm already on board by who the villains are. And then I've heard that it's actually a good movie. So.
Oh, yeah. It's legit. I love Stallone, and I like a lot of the more recent sort of. I feel like in like the early 2000s, he was doing stuff that wasn't getting as much attention. Like Detox was one, also called like I See You, I think it's called.
Yeah, I was about to say, isn't that the movie that has like 8 different titles?
Yeah, because I think Ron Howard might have. I don't think he gets credit, but I heard he like reshot a lot of it.
Yeah, is it the one where it's like a serial killer, right?
Yeah, and it's all like a lot of it's like underground in this bunker.
Yeah.
And I think that is a movie where something happened either midway through production or after it was done. They had to go back and reshoot and rewrite a lot of stuff. And you can tell that certain parts of the movie don't quite fit. But that said, I still think it's a really interesting movie. He does a great job. And at the end of the day, I'll take an interesting movie that's, different,
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what? It's stayed with me since I've seen it.
Will Blind Fury stay with you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Do you know how many scripts this movie, how many screenplay revisions this movie had?
I have no idea.
11.
Is that a lot or not a lot?
It seems like a lot to me. Took them 7 years to get this movie made. With 11. It feels like a long time. Yeah, there's a quote from Tim Matheson talking about like, it took, 7 years and 11 drafts and blah, 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 blah. It's like, maybe just abandon it at some point. Like, I mean, I get that you love this, but holy shit. Like what's strange is 11 drafts of the screenplay. It's like 11 drafts of the screenplay and this is what you got and this is what you got. It's like, which one is it?
This reminds me of the, oh my God, I'm now going to, it's the Rex Weiner private detective, Ford Fairlane. Have you read or seen Ford Fairlane?
Is that the Andrew Dice Clay movie?
Yeah. So originally they were...
Which I thought wasn't a real movie, by the way. I thought like I had dreamed it up and it was called Cool as Dice. I thought like that, which I would be a better title. But like, I thought that was the name of the movie. I know that Cool as Ice exists, but I thought I had dreamed up a Andrew Dice Clay vehicle film. Apparently I had not dreamed it up.
You should, pitch it to him.
Cool as Dice.
So the Ford Fairlane stories by Rex Weiner, which were in like the LA Weekly and I can't remember what New York publication. Those are fantastic, gritty, like Private Eye in the punk rock world because Rex was part of that scene.
Right.
Incredible. I love them. And they recently got reissued. But in the book, like the last half of the book is basically him talking about how this like thing that he wrote really quickly became like 10 years of his life because people kept optioning it and trying to make a movie and then it never came to fruition. So he kept, it's like every year someone pays him for the rights again and hires him to work on the screenplay.
Stop and start and stop and start and stop and start.
And so he just kept getting, he's like, I keep getting paychecks. Great.
Right.
But
They're going to fucking pay me. I guess so.
But so then you ask the question, it's like, well, how does it wind up with the Andrew Dice Clay movie? Because it's pretty different from what the stories began as.
Right.
For whatever reason, between the money and the pre-production, that clicked and it worked. We could have had any number of different Ford Fairlane movies. And I wonder if that's what the commentary for Blind Fury is going to talk about. Like maybe Draft 3 almost got made and then something happened.
Right. And that's what I wonder. Because again, with stuff like this, there's not a lot about it. It's not like the writers and the directors haven't said anything about it. You know, Charles Robert Carner it's not like he's on the record saying, I won't talk about this movie or anything, but it'll be interesting to see kind of what comes out of that commentary. Because I've got to assume at one point the dial was this way, and then at another point the dial was this way, and then at another point it was halfway one way and halfway the other way, and then this is where they was kind of right in the middle almost is what it feels like. There's got to be versions of this where there was like much more gore and weird violence, and then one where it's just like comedy and ha-has all the time. Like a movie where they're trying to make you laugh and then a woman's getting point blank shotgun 5 minutes later is fucking strange. That's a tonal mess. That's tonal whiplash because that character doesn't survive. That character is dead. And it's one of the main character's moms. So that's being used to dramatic effect. But like, it's like, this is serious. You can't present it the way you're presenting it and expect me to be like, oh yeah, this makes sense where you were joking about an alligator being a dog not 5 minutes ago.
I wonder if there was ever a gator scene. 'Cause I think there could have been a good gator scene.
Where he's like fighting alligators. He hears the hisses. And he's like, yeah, cutting them. Yeah, why not?
You know, he's fighting with somebody. He, like you said, he hears the hiss. He jumps out of the way. The gator grabs the other guy.
Yeah. Right. You know what? Instead of him cutting Randall Tex Cobb in half, an alligator jumps out the window. Like Rutger Hauer dodges out of the way, and an alligator Willem Dafoe's Randall Tex Cobb and goes out the window with him.
Could have had a gator pit.
Yeah. I mean, this movie takes place in Florida.
I mean, at the end, it's in Reno, but it's like drug lord in Reno.
Right.
People are crazy in Reno.
Yeah.
They probably got gator pits.
Right. What a strange city to set the movie in. Just like Reno, Nevada. You know Las Vegas exists, right?
I've only been to Reno once. Reno was a very weird place. I thought that was I had a good time, but I haven't been to Vegas. So.
Vegas is its own thing. If you're ever in Vegas, look up Father Malone.
I heard about that guy.
I've heard of a thing or two about that man.
Great man.
Yeah.
We got to do a podcast together, thanks to you.
Yeah. I don't know. I might pick up the Blu-ray for this. I liked it more than Wanted Dead or Alive because this movie actually had action, and that movie kind of it's like this is a action comedy that doesn't really fulfill the comedy part. That was an action movie that didn't really fulfill the action part. So maybe the next movie will actually be both of the things or whatever it's claiming to be, because
I'm curious to see that one.
It's okay. It's not, there's like very little action, and the best part of the movie other than Rutger Hauer is what's his name? Gene Simmons, but he's not in it enough. He's great. He's amazing. But they're just like, Gene, we only need you for like 2 scenes. It's like 3, I guess. But that's one of those things where also in the movie, it has a problem with like writing interesting character interactions. I'll just leave it at that because you want to watch it. But it kind of has some of the same problems that this movie does in a lot of ways, coincidentally. So, but it's not a funny movie. It's not trying to be a comedy the way this is. And man, I love the poster for this movie. If I could just have that part of the poster without the words, and it's just Rutger Hauer going with the sword, like that's awesome. That's super cool. The best thing we get out of this movie is Rutger Hauer throwing a sword through Randall Tex Cobb, and then them trying to convince us he's got it in his chest without showing it, and the poster for the movie, and the Randall Tex Cobb maquette that they're using to come in half out the window, which I just love. Yeah. It looks like Ronnie Cox from RoboCop. It's that same that is not a person, but at least he doesn't have those weird gigantic arms that puppet did. But I don't know. Do you know what I'm talking about in RoboCop?
It's been a while since I've seen it, but
Do you have it on Criterion Blu-ray or just
no. I just got the old MGM DVD.
At the end of RoboCop, Ronnie Cox goes out the window and they cut to a shot of a puppet falling backwards. And the puppet is, have you seen Videodrome, right?
Yeah.
You know how weird James Woods' arm looks in that one scene? It's the same thing where like they can't figure out arm proportions right. So Ronnie Cox has these like giant gorilla arms and they're like gigantic and they shoot out like almost like above his head and they're like moving and it looks really bad. And in this movie, it's like that's just like a maquette getting cut in half and thrown. But it works here. It works in this movie because like it's a kind of a weird angle. It's kind of like a horror, like diagonally looking down at it. It's a really strange shot, but it kind of
has some
works.
like Hitchcock vibe.
Yeah,
like from like Vertigo or something. Like
yeah,
it seemed like a more like classic movie sort of effect of someone falling. I liked it.
Yeah, I thought it was good.
And you see him get cut and you see him fall, and it's only midway through the fall that he splits apart. And I was like, nice timing.
Yeah.
So I was like, great. Oh, this is rad. He's out the window. Oh, yeah. Get like an extra little applause.
No, the climax is definitely the best part of this movie. I think that's kind of when the movie, when it's able to kind of integrate the comedy, but because the action is so snappy and just going, it gives the comedy just the barest minimum of time, but it is still there because it is kind of slapsticky. So there is the comedy there. And that's when the movie's really working, is when the comedy is really just slapstick, but the action is also really good. So it's just kind of augmenting and complementing the action. But when it's just like action, no comedy, it's like, I'm not taking this so much. Like Randall Tex Cobb blowing away a woman point blank at the beginning of the movie. But that cop got his hand cut off. And then Carl Weathered from Predator shot after his hand came off. Did you see that?
That was rad. I like that
great.
opening. That's
the cop coming up behind Rutger Hauer with the piece of glass, and Rutger Hauer just goes bang and gets him. I mean, come on, that's great.
It's a very well directed scene.
Yeah. How'd you feel about the overall like final ending scene?
Oh, with the boy.
Yeah,
kind of running after him.
A little unearned, right?
I think it's what I was trying to say earlier, where it feels like their bond. That's what the movie's going for at the end. Like, to use your word, earned. Yeah, it didn't. I was fine with it. I didn't.
Lone Wolf and Cub, this is not. But like, that's kind of that same interplay, right? Like the back and forth. I mean, Terminator does it too. That's just kind of reminded me of.
It's in the original. It's in the Zatoichi movie too.
Right.
I understood it. I didn't feel great pathos, but I'm not like, oh my God, that's a terrible ending. Like I can see that's what it wanted to go for.
Yeah. It ended the movie on kind of a strange, somber note with, the camera kind of Rutger Hauer center of frame with a tear running down his eye. It's very serious stuff. It's just like, what are you doing, movie? Like, this movie kind of was fun. Like, don't be so goddamn serious here at the end. Because this is not earned in a lot of ways. This is a very strange tone. Because again, like you said, the kid and Rutger Hauer, like, yeah, it's great that they got along and everything, but he was in your life for 2 days. You'll be fine.
I think that's one of the things that makes Zatoichi such an interesting character. Is he's not just like all, severe samurai star. He's not all straight comedy. The actor who played the original Zatoichi, like, does a really good job sort of having moments of vulnerability, of, moments of emotion and tenderness, moments of, comedy, moments of being very capable swordsmen. And I think that's what Rutger Hauer was going for. And he has the acting chops to do it.
Yeah. I just don't think the script suits that as well as it could have. Because, yeah, Rutger Hauer is a capable actor, beyond capable actor.
I can imagine other drafts, as we've said, where maybe this would have been like the perfect ending.
Yeah, it totally. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's a version of this where this ending totally makes sense. They even echo the thing with the dinosaur. Like, they're trying to earn it, but it's like that. It's just.
I mean, I think one thing that sort of, they leave the the kid, there's not a lot of stuff between the father and the son when they're reunited.
Zero,
And I think-
essentially.
Because from the kid's perspective, it's just like, cool, like, mom's killed. You've been on the road with this guy. Now you're meeting your dad who you don't know. It's like, no wonder he prefers being with, Rutger Hauer. Clearly, Rutger Hauer is capable of taking care of him.
Right. And he looked like Rutger Hauer. That hair. He had Rutger Hauer's hair. There's that scene where they're like very awkwardly nose to nose in a way that like a child shouldn't be with someone that they really don't know that well. Because like in that scene, you almost think like it looks like that's the way they'd be interacting if he was his father.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Here's how you make this movie make sense. All right. Have him be his kid, and he comes back from Vietnam to find out he has a kid, and this kid has gotten himself into trouble, and he has to go and save his kid, or he has to save his wife with his kid. But make it his kid. Cut out the Terry O'Quinn character altogether. He does nothing really. I mean, yeah, he saves Rutger Hauer's character, but like that's because that's what the script says he was going to do. You didn't have to write it that way. You didn't even have to include a secondary protagonist, essentially.
So it's interesting you sort of touch on this because in the Zatoichi film, the little boy draws, and at a certain point, I think Zatoichi says like, "Oh, draw a picture of your mother for me." Because later on, when he meets the father, he's like, "Oh, he's obviously your son. He's been drawing, the whole trip. Here's a picture of, his mom that he drew." And then they unfold the picture, and it's actually of Zatoichi. But Zatoichi, of course, doesn't, because he's blind. He can't see what's on the photo or on the drawing. So there is that moment where, like, that is a bigger part of the Japanese film, like the fact that this boy is sort of seeing Zatoichi as a parent figure.
Right.
And then he's sort of being like, "Hey, you're going to meet the son you've never met before." And then the dad being like, "And he thinks you're his parent." But that works dramatically really well in the Zatoichi film. And
right. I think this movie wanted to do something like that.
And that's actually really hard. And
yeah, especially in a movie where there is supposed to be comedy, because that's not funny. It's funny, but like it's not being played for laughs. It's being used for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think this movie should have just I think this movie should have just been straight drama. Like, really, like one or the other. But like, I think they would have both worked. If this movie had been straight action drama, action movie verging on drama, like a high stakes action movie, I think it would have been good. And obviously, I think we both agree it would have been good as a comedy. But like, it's weird. What's weird is infrequently do we run into a movie where either tone could work. Most of the time we're like, well, it's not really a good comedy, so it should have just been a horror movie. It's like both of the parts that they're going for work, and if you strip the comedy out, then you don't have to worry about the comedy anyways and just focus on the action part. It's very strange. It's kind of an anomaly in a way. Most of the time it's one of the genres works and the other doesn't. In this one, it's like they kind of both work. They just clashed with each other too much to work together. The way it's being written in this movie, at least.
I wish it had gone a little more comedy. I think there would have been, trying to reconcile a lot of the Vietnam trauma.
Serious.
I mean, they could have done it. And it was in vogue at the time.
Yeah. But like, that's a different movie.
Yeah.
That's a different narrative altogether. That's a different way of telling this story.
That's like a First Blood opening.
Yeah.
Where Stallone is going to like find his old war buddy, and then he finds, shit's going down and gets into trouble himself along the way.
Yeah. Again, like it's like they saw other movies of the time, other American action movies, and we're like, let's take this from this and this from this, and let's put this in our movie and see if we could make it work. Because the Vietnam thing really makes no sense. And again, they're just trying to like steer into the war of the time and the kind of the big social issue still, I guess, or the thing in the front of everybody's mind still, at least up until, the war on terror takes that place. But I just like, movie, you're so serious. But then the next scene, it's like, avoiding dog shit, but thinks that dog is a gator. Was this guy blind and like his eyes were fucked up like 2 minutes ago? It's just pick something that makes sense from A to B to C to D. Don't give us tenuous at best, because some of those things are real tenuous as to whether or not they work. So, but Rutger Hauer's good. So there's that at least. Everybody's good in this movie.
Yeah.
Like nobody's bad. Like even Terry O'Quinn, who doesn't really add anything, is okay. Like he doesn't add anything to the movie, but he's all right. I mean, we don't like the child actor, but that's child actors for you.
I think the actor does fine. Like the child.
I guess it's hard for me to tell because the character is just so kind of precocious and annoying. It's like if that's what they wrote, the way they wrote it, then perfect.
I think that's what they did. I mean, the first time the child sees Rutger Hauer, he's giving him the bird.
That's fair. That's fair.
And feeding him a stone when,
very fucked up, man. Who does that?
Fucking little kids.
Fucking little shitter kids, man. So, Cullen, final thoughts on Blind Fury.
I would recommend checking this out and also the Zatoichi film. I would say watch them both.
I would definitely, again, suggest checking out this movie. It's, Rutger Hauer is not given a lot of times to be the lead in an action movie. So yeah, this movie has problems, but those problems that it has are kind of just more a problem of the way they've decided to try and tell this story, which is a genre mashup, which it doesn't need to be a action comedy. It should have just been a comedy or just an action movie. If it had been one of the other, but not both, if it had just been an action movie with like the one-liners sprinkled in, I think it could have worked. But that's not an action comedy. That's an action movie with one-liners, which is, if you set the tone of that action movie, one-liners are expected. There are plenty of action movies where you don't expect one-liners. But there are also plenty of action movies where if you're not getting one-liners, you're kind of surprised. This movie could have been one of those movies. But again, it also could have just been a very serious, gritty, again, Bronson-esque movie. But it wasn't. And it was kind of a little bit of both. And that's unfortunate. But Rutger Hauer's good. And ultimately, that's all that matters because it is Rutger Hauer month. And Rutger Hauer's good. Even if he looks like a fucking guy who's going to go down to your local lake to fly fish. But other than that, he looks like a dork in this movie. But I love it. Like his khaki vest is a choice.
He's got to look unassuming.
Yeah. Other than the fact that he's, blind. There is that. I think my favorite thing in the entire movie is like start counting when they toss his cane out the window. I was like, that, why they know about that? Because they actually had someone work with Rutger Hauer on being blind. Lynn Manning is who he worked with. Like you and I would not think about that, but someone who's actually blind, like start counting. Like that's so like, I liked that. That was like, that's an understanding of this. Why it's in this movie, I like no idea. It doesn't do anything, but like it's kind of a neat little like how would you figure that out?
That's a good point.
Yeah. So on that note, let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast.
I unloaded a full clip 450 Magnum, point blank. He disappeared.
He can hear its heartbeat.
Where'd he go?
He knows it's out there.
Somebody must have seen something.
He knows what it can do.
You're telling me there's something running around loose in this city, ripping the hearts out of people and eating them?
Maybe he eats them for breakfast.
Now it's really pissing him off.
Buster!
And his new partner
I work alone.
makes two.
Paranoid people with guns are a menace to society.
You'd be paranoid too if you had a dipshit like this following you.
I've got nonos and serial homicide.
Oh, terrific.
It has no motive.
The only thing we know for sure is that he's not a vegetarian.
It has the DNA structure of all its victims.
It gives no warning.
You ready to die?
But one thing's for certain.
We gotta get bigger guns!
It ain't no pushover.
2, yeah! Bingo!
We want to get to Cannon Street.
No, you don't.
Yes, we do. Boy, are you pushy.
I wouldn't say this thing thinks it's Satan. I'd say it is Satan.
Rat bastard!
Satan is a deep shit.
Get out of there! 5 seconds!
Okay, 4,
Rutger Hauer. Split second.
Nice timing.
Split second.
So that's right. On the next Culture Cast, we're going to be talking about Split Second, a movie that Cullen has seen. You think I'll like it? You think do you like it? Is it good?
I enjoyed it. I think you'll enjoy it.
Interesting. It's a sci-fi action movie, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Sci-fi and action. Another genre kind of cross. Those genres kind of work together though, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to rewatch it before I listen to your episode.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch it. You know, it'll be the first sci-fi movie of the month, which kind of Rutger Hauer, sci-fi movie, Rutger Hauer. What's the other one? Blade Runner. So I'm excited to watch it. It looks the cover, the poster looks interesting. So until then, Cullen, where could people find you if they were looking?
If they were looking on Bandcamp, I played lap steel on a few songs on my friend's new album. The band is called Hard Job, and the album is Intesticide. So if you just go to hardjob.bandcamp.com, you can hear the album. I think I play on 5 of the songs. Well, if you're in Brooklyn, New York, on August 18th, you can see Hard Job live at Mama Tried in Sunset Park. We will have one rehearsal before we do the show. But
better
Scott
than no rehearsals before the show.
I mean, Scott and Fred, the main dudes, they've played together for years. I'm the new addition, so they will have had many more rehearsals. I will have one with them. So,
well, I don't live in Brooklyn, but if I did, I would be there.
Oh, thank you. You'll be there in spirit.
As for me, if you wanted to track me down and harass me on the internet, don't harass me. But if you want to track me down, cstachiw.com, cstachiw.com. That's my link tree. Go there for all the things that I work on. There are many of them. Obviously, if you've listened to any one of these shows, you would know that. As for this show, culturecast.com, patreon.com/culturecast, all the places that you can go to hear more of me and more of Cullen and more of Richard, who's not here, but he would be here. He's here. Talk about somebody who's here in spirit. Last time Richard was here, you were here in spirit.
That's true.
Talking about Mr. Majestic and his goddamn watermelons. So, but yeah, Cullen, thank you so much for joining me, as always.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
And we will catch you on the next episode.